Hut, hut, fight!
All right, what is up, Utah fans? This is Joseph back with the Utah Utes Football Digest, and today we are talking about the Holy War: Salt Lake City versus Provo, Utah versus BYU, Devin Dampier versus Bear Bachmeier, and two very highly touted defenses in Utah and BYU going at it. This should be a very fun game, guys. BYU 6-0. Utah 5-1, and Utah's one loss is against what many believe to be a top 5 and currently top 7 team in the country in Texas Tech. And it was a game that was dead even until the mid fourth quarter. So the schedules look a little differently. This could very well have been an undefeated matchup. It isn't, so I'm not going to make caveats there, but it is a very good 5-1 against a very good 6-0 for BYU. So this should be an awesome matchup, guys. It is in Provo, and you know the Zoobs are going to come out angry and going to try to rattle Devin Dampier, and they will be as out for this game as they are for any game they ever play in their lives because Big Brother Utah is coming to play. It should be a good one, guys. I'm excited to break it down. Like I said, these are two very good teams. And as both coaches have talked about, there's a lot of parity here. I'm going to touch on that as we break down the numbers. But really, I feel like there's a lot of this uh, this team has a little better position group here and a little better position group here, but it's not like one team has a bunch of problems and the other team has a bunch of great players at one position. It is two very well-rounded teams that bring a lot of talent to the table and really look like solid squads. It is going to be a fun one to break down, find out where the areas each team could get exposed are, and I'm not going to put it off any longer, guys. We're going to dive into PFF grades. We're going to dive into all of it. So if you're into the analytics and really want to get a good idea of what to expect in Utah versus BYU, you're on the right channel. Before we get into it, like the video, comment down below. Who do you think is going to win? Who are going to be the big time players? Who am I missing? What do you agree with? Let's hear it. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let's go ahead and dive in. We'll talk BYU versus Utah in Provo, the Holy War. Let's get at it and go Utes. Okay, guys, and a little twist here. Usually we start with Utah's passing game versus the opponent's passing defense, but I'm going to switch it up today. I want to take a look at BYU first. So this is a guy that is definitely an X factor for the game, and Bear Bachmeier, number 47 for BYU. He's their quarterback, currently grading out at a 72.5, but I'm not as much in love with the grades for PFF. I know a lot of people will just throw PFF grades out on the screen and tell you that's how good the players are. I do look at the grades, but really what I use PFF for is to dive into the analytics and get a better idea of who the player is, because that's what PFF does really well is they have a lot of data here on the player. So check it out here. So Bear Bachmeier has dropped back to throw the ball 164 times this year. He's actually thrown it 104 of those 164 and completed 91 of those passes for a 63.2 completion percentage. At service level, that's a pretty low completion percentage, right? 65 is kind of standard where it's a decent number, not a great number, but a decent number you can live with. So that is pretty low. Also, his yards per attempt isn't super high either, 8.4. It's not exactly through the roof. So you'd think the completion percentage would be higher. 8 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, pretty good TD to INT ratio there. The where it's not great is right here. The big time throws only 5, and turnover worthy plays is a little more with 6, which we'll get into Devin Dampier later, but his isn't perfect either. So I would say not a terrible big time throws or turnover worthy plays, but it's clear that through the air, that's not where Bear Bachmeier shines. As a guy that's watched a lot of BYU football this year, I will give you that he does come through in the clutch, right? When he is needed, I feel like that 63% when it's like, hey, third down, fourth down, or, like need to get some drives together, that 63% definitely jumps up to like 70, 75%. But that also means that when he's not needed and when the game's a little more less down to the wire. He does seem to make some mistakes and make some errant throws here and there. So I think that's worth calling out. But as a passer, I'd say just service level. Bear Mockmeyer, not crazy impressive through the air. I will tell you this though: 55 first downs. So that means he's getting close to 10 first downs a game. So they played 6 games. It's like 9 first downs a game, right around there. So he is getting some first downs through the air. He's only been sacked 5 times. Yeah, he definitely is a guy that does make plays through the air. So I don't want these numbers to tell you guys that he sucks through the air, but it's more above average through the air than it is anything special. But he is a clutch QB. I'm going to touch on his ability as a rusher. So let's go ahead and go there. I'm going to get the running backs and fullbacks out of here. We're just going to look at quarterbacks here. So we're just looking at Bear Bachmeier. So let's go ahead and lower that rushing total number. So take a look at Bear here. We'll look at Parker Kingston later when we talk about all the rushing weapons. But Bear is a deadly player on the ground. I'd say he's just as deadly on the ground as he is through the air. You take a look here, guys. He's ran the ball almost 70 times. So he's ran the ball more times than he's gotten first downs through the air, right? So 69 attempts rushing the ball, 317 yards, 7 touchdowns, right? 4.6 yards a carry. He is a deadly runner. We are going to see him run the ball. He's averaging over 50 rushing yards per game. And limiting that and trying to shut that down will be a big part of if Utah can win this game out in Provo. Where there is a bright side here is he has fumbled the ball 4 times, which is quite a bit. And in Bears' favor, though, he's also broken 14 tackles. So you think about that, that's over 2 tackles a game. It's like 2.5-ish a game, something in that range, 2.75-ish a game. He's breaking tackles. He's got 13 carries that have gone for 10 plus yards and only one that went for 15 plus yards and 20 first downs on the ground. So he is picking up first downs on the ground. That's about 4 first downs a game, or maybe 3.5 first downs a game on the ground. So he is a weapon with his feet. And he doesn't look bad through the air. I think when you look at the numbers, the thing that really stands out is the 7 rushing touchdowns. He's getting more than 1 rushing touchdown a game as a quarterback. That's pretty, that stands out pretty strong and that's pretty impressive. So I do think that's one of the clear things we're going to have to watch with Bear is his ability to run the ball. And that's always much easier said than done to contain a rushing quarterback. Because it's one thing to get back there and get to him, but then can you tackle him? Can you get him to the ground? Because that's a different story, right? So that's the passing situation for BYU, the quarterback. That's Bear. I think there's even in the rushing game, which is kind of his forte, he's got the 4 fumbles as a bit of a black mark on his rushing game. And then through the air, it's very blah, right? It's a low completion percentage, a good TD to INT ratio, but the big time throws, the turnover worthy plays isn't great. So I'd say Bear definitely looks like a solid quarterback, but nothing crazy impressive. And I think that's fair to say when you break down the numbers. But I'd also say for a quarterback that's leading his team to an undefeated season up to this point as a freshman, and with the number 47, which is what it is. I'm not a huge fan of wild, outlandish numbers in position groups, especially quarterback. I always feel it's very odd when people have very unique, odd numbers at quarterback. Anyways, I know it's a weird little detail. But I do think he's a solid player with a mix of good and bad. He is a playmaker, though. Don't get me wrong. Whatever we're looking at there, what you see with Bear Bachmeier, and we're about to talk about the receiving weapons because they've got some nasty receivers on this squad. They've got 2 clear playmakers for BYU at the receiver position. Whatever you think about Bear, he is quite bad when he's bad, right? There are streaks throughout the game, and I think BYU fans will say this, is that when he's not doing well, it's kind of tough to watch and looks very low quality. I hope that's not offensive, but it's true. When it's bad, it's quite bad. But when it's good with Bear, it is really good. And he's streaky, but that's why you've seen BYU get down so bad in so many games and have these wild comebacks. Because when you have them 14-3 or 21-7 or whatever, the game's not over. When this guy gets hot, he can make plays. And let's talk about his weapons here because it is a very good group of weapons for Bear Bachmeyer. I think this is probably BYU's standout matchup, or at least standout position comparison when you compare the array of weapons Utah has compared to the array of weapons that BYU has. I think it's pretty safe to say that BYU, at least at the receiver position, has a great duo where we kind of have a one-man show right now. Anyways, moving on to the receivers, it all starts with this guy, Chase Roberts, 420 yards on the season. He's been targeted 36 times, caught 22 passes, and has 3 touchdowns, averaging nearly 20 yards per reception, 19 yards, 1 yards per catch. He makes freaking plays, guys, and averaged 7.4 yak yards per catch. So, as impressive as his 19.1 yards per reception is, the yak yards make it that much more impressive because that means he's catching his average ball at about 13 yards, which is already a first down, and then averaging 7+ yards after the catch. That is very impressive. I mean, for my money, Chase Roberts is one of the best wide receivers in all of college football right now. Anytime you turn on a BYU game, this guy does stand out. He is very impressive. And again, guys, look, 18 first downs and he has 22 catches. So nearly every single catch he has is for a first down. He is a playmaker, guys. Again, 420 yards. He is a guy that you need to limit if you want to win this game. He's, well into the 60, 70. I don't know if the exact number off the top of my head, but it's 70-ish yards a game. He makes an impact on every game. So watch out for that guy. Next up, we got Parker Kingston, which is probably, more of the wide receiver 2 in this situation, but it is kind of a wide receiver 1A and a wide receiver 1B, where my money would be that Chase Roberts, when I watch, is the better of the two, right? Especially when you look at how much yards he averages per catch. But Parker Kingston is no joke either. Track star coming out of high school, blazing speed, and it shows on tape. The guy can get downfield and he can make your DBs look slow. So take a look, guys. Parker Kingston, 333 yards receiving on the season, 14.5 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns. And you look here, so he is playing out wide, but he's also playing more in the slot. So the majority of his snaps are going to come in the slot, but he does play out wide as well. Where for Parker Kingston, it's just a little bit in the slot and more exclusively out wide. So you'll see Parker Kingston more in the slot. And then with that, Parker Kingston's got 11 first downs, so half of his catches are going for first downs. So playmaker there. And then also Carson Ryan, not as impressive. He used to be a player at Utah, but Carson Ryan is putting up some decent numbers here. 211 yards on the season. That's 35 to 40 yards a game, something in that range. So decent numbers for Carson Ryan. Also 2 TDs, 15.1 yards per catch, 20 targets, 14 catches. First downs, he's got 10 first downs on the season. So, almost every catch he has is for a first down. So Carson Ryan doesn't stand out to me as a big time weapon, but will they try to work him into the game? Will they try to make him a part of things? Absolutely. He'll be a guy we're going to want to limit and keep closed off as much as we can. LJ Martin, Cody Hagan, not getting involved as much, not going to touch too much on those guys because, each of them are less than 100 yards in the year. But either way, those three, Chase Roberts is the one, Parker Kingston is the 1B, and then Carson Ryan is kind of the third option in that group. But a really good trio. To say Carson Ryan with 211 yards in the season is the third option, that's a good statement if you're a BYU fan. Okay, guys, and now we are looking at the offensive line for BYU, and I do want to touch on something before I dive into this. BYU's offensive line does look really strong, but as we look at all these numbers, I do want to make sure we're on the same page here. So, strength of schedule. So, strength of schedule basically just says how good are the teams you've played so far to get the stats you have, to get the records you have. BYU is a little above average at 52nd schedule strength of schedule, where Utah is actually 21st strength of schedule. So Utah's played a significantly harder schedule. Not that BYU hasn't played a tough schedule, because 52nd isn't bad, but I do want to make that caveat. I mean, BYU's offensive line looks solid, but I also don't think they've had too many matchups that really tested this offensive line. So I think that's worth mentioning. Where Utah's defense is going to get after you and going to test this front five. So taking a look here, Isaiah Jada leads the crew in pressures, 183 snaps, allowed 6 pressures. I'm guessing this Whalen guy, there's one of these guys that must not be the starter. I'm not sure who it is. But kind of from Austin down, they all have 104 or less snaps. They played roughly half the season ish. So it looks like these three are kind of the starters, and then some grouping of these three, which I'm guessing this guy got pulled because 4 pressures on 89 pass block snaps is pretty high. But I'd say you look at this, guys. Again, this is just their pass blocking. None of these guys stand out as terrible, and all of them look very good. I mean, it seems like a unit that will test our edge rushers, that will test our interior. Does not seem like they have any obvious weak spots. Looks like a pretty good offensive line for BYU. So not too much to harp on there. Now let's go ahead and move over to Utah's pass rushers, and then we'll talk about Utah's coverage matchups against their receiving and passing game. So let's go ahead and take a look at Utah's pass rush. So only looking at Utah. All right. So Utah and boom. All right, yeah, let's go ahead and just go off guys that have at least, let's say, 25 pass rush snaps or 24. That's good. So that's what 4 pass rushes a game. That's it's not a crazy. Actually, I think we need to go more than that. I'm going to go 30, just because I want to make sure we get a good idea of who the actual pass rushers are going to be in the game. So let's go ahead and sort by pass rush snaps because that's a really important one. So Jonah Laea, not too crazy here, 9 pressures on 163 pass rush snaps. So we're talking about a 5% or a little over 5%, maybe 6-7% pressure rate. Win percentage only 4%, so nothing crazy there. Jonah Laea doesn't look amazing pass rushing, but not terrible either. But where it starts to get good is clearly John Henry Daly, 8 sacks on the season, one of the sack leaders in the country, a 26.4% win percentage. You can see that over here, guys. That means over 25% of the time he is beating the guy that is trying to block him and getting back there for an attempt to get a pressure. That is extremely impressive, and that is why he has 8 sacks on the season. And according to PFF, he actually has 9 sacks, but ESPN shows it at 8. We'll call it 8.5. So pretty impressive stuff there. And then at edge rusher, it continues to get impressive. We've got Logan Fano here with what I'm actually going to sort by win percentage to see the guys that really stand out. So we got Logan Fano right here, 14.8% win percentage, 12 pressures on the season on only 92 pass rush snaps. Very impressive play for Logan Fano. John Henry Daly and Logan Fano, nasty edge rusher duo. Paul Fitzgerald, only 38 pass rush snaps, but a 15.2 win percentage. Problem is he's out for the game. He's ruled out, so kind of annoying there. Is what it is. Got to live with it. Lander Barton, too, on 48 pass rush snaps, 15.2% win percentage. He continues to be a nightmare getting back there to rush the passer, and we do blitz him a lot. Again, 48 pass rush snaps on the season. That means he's going to average about 8 per game, which means we'll definitely see, or at least 8 per game. Yeah, I think it's 8 per game. Some of the math is off the top of my head, so don't judge me. But we'll definitely see him get some opportunities to get back there. Lance Holtzclaw, though, another guy that will be in that edge rusher rotation. He has a 13.7% pass rush win rate with 7 pressures on 55 pass rush snaps. So over a 10% pressure rate with 13.7% win percentage. Even without Paul Fitzgerald, the trio of John Henry Daly, Logan Fano, and Lance Holtzclaw will have any quarterback having nightmares. I mean, these guys are going to get back there. They're going to cause pressure. Then we got Carson Kafusi, more of a guy that's going to come up the defensive interior, but on 37 pass rush snaps, he's a 12.1% win percentage, only 3 pressures, but still on 37 pass rush snaps. That's 7.5, 8% pressure rate. So pretty impressive there. Jonathan Hall, too, another linebacker for Utah that gets back there and causes big pressure. 12.1% pressure rate on 35 snaps, 7 total pressures. So we've got a really good group of guys that can cause pressure off the edges with the edge rushers, right? And then we've got a really good group of linebackers that can kind of cause some havoc up the middle. Now, the trick for Utah is outside of Carson Kafusi, who only has 37 snaps, we need to create more pressure in the interior, right? So I would love to see Carson Kafusi get back there, get more snaps. Dallas Vakalahi had a pretty bad penalty last week. I know he just got back, but a 9.1% win rate. So I think that's, if you're looking at Utah's defensive front, pass rush wise, and you're hoping for more, I think that's the area you wish you saw a little more. But either way, it's an extremely good group where we can add pressure up the middle with some nasty pass rushing linebackers and our edge rushers. If you're a BYU fan and you're not familiar with our edge rushers and not at least a little worried about them, then you haven't been paying any attention to the Big 12 or college football in general, because everyone's talking about this edge rush unit, and especially John Henry Daly, one of the best pass rushers in all of college football, and a guy that I think is working his way into that day 2 draft conversation. And, if he continues the type of season he's having, there's a possibility he could be talked about as like a late first round pick. He really is starting to become a superstar and a game changer for Utah. Okay, now let's go ahead and move on to coverage. So, as we talked about, guys, they are going to bring a really tough two receivers at us in Parker Kingston and Chase Roberts. They really are. It's a really good group there. And they also have Carson Ryan at tight end. He's no joke. They're going to try to get him involved. So, take a look here, guys. So, it starts with a few guys that really stand out. So Jackson Benny, he has been playing corner, slot corner, but he got moved to safety, which I personally think is a much better fit. You can see here he's grading out at 76.1, 23 targets, 15 receptions allowed, 188 yards allowed, and 79 yak yards allowed. I do want to give him a caveat. That yak number has stayed the same basically the past few weeks ever since Texas Tech. He lit up a few big plays at the very end of that Texas Tech game. And I think it's artificially hurting this number, just to be honest with you guys. But then he's also got the 3 INTs, the 2 pass breakups, and he ran one back for a pick 6. He is a playmaker. I'm excited we're going to have him out there. And what I think he does for you, because of how nasty he is as a ball hawk, is he makes offenses at least worry about going his direction. Even though he does let up some yards, it makes a quarterback hesitate. It makes an offensive coordinator hesitate about the game plan if you're trying to go that direction. So I think that's a good sign for Utah. Nate Ritchie's the next guy up. He's out for the game, so don't worry about him. Blake Cotton's a guy, though, against Arizona State, I thought did a pretty formidable job going one-on-one against Jordan Tyson, kind of filling in that Zemiah Vaughn role. I thought he impressed there. I thought he looked very strong. Elijah Davis as well. He's a guy that's been targeted a lot, 24 times, but only allowed 11 catches and 95 yards and 177 coverage snaps. I'm shocked his grade is so low, that 62.7, because he really has held his own and's only allowed 39 yak yards on the season. I mean, I think Elijah Davis for 177 coverage snaps, he's allowing less than half a yard per snap. I mean, that's pretty impressive. I think he's doing a stand-up job. So good on you, Elijah Davis. All right, moving on. Smith Snowden, probably a guy a lot of you BYU fans have heard about. And as a Utah fan, you definitely know his name. 140 coverage snaps, 22 targets, 11 receptions allowed, only 85 yards allowed. Another guy allowing, about half a yard per coverage snap. So impressive numbers there. 3 pass breakups on the season as well. So solid player. Nate Tillman has started to get in a little, started to rotate in. He's got 40 coverage snaps, 3 targets, 2 receptions allowed, 58 yards allowed. So pretty high, allowed 14 yak yards. So hopefully he can clean things up a little bit. And then Lander Barton and Jonathan Hall. I think these are impressive numbers. I don't understand their PFF grades being as low as they are, but Lander Barton and Jonathan Hall in 106 pass coverage snaps and 98 pass coverage snaps respectively have allowed 5 targets and 9 targets for Barton and Hall. And then Barton's allowed 4 catches, Hall's allowed 7. Neither one of them has allowed more than 40 yards. And basically all the yards they've each allowed are almost all yak yards, which sure, you don't love that it's all yak yards, but it also tells you that they don't let guys open. They are like on their guys and they make it tough for you to throw. And especially Lander Barton was a guy a lot of people are talking about heading into this year. But as a Utah fan, you got to be happy with the way Jonnu Hall is performing. It really is quite impressive Tao Johnson here, 185 coverage snaps. So basically more coverage snaps than almost than anyone else. And he's been targeted 11 times, only allowed 4 catches for 33 yards. This is why I don't understand PFF grades. He's been targeted 11 times on 185 coverage snaps, allowed 4 catches for 33 yards and only 14 yak yards on 100 guys. This is like zero point 0.2 yards, 0.15 yards per coverage snap. That's crazy. And he's allowed 0 touchdowns. He has an interception. I mean, he's basically allowed nothing. So, very impressive year so far by Taylor Johnson, a guy that's not getting enough praise, but he is, not letting anything up. Lavani Damuni, a guy that, I think post injury, we tried to work him in slowly, but he's getting in there. And it feels like when he's out there, he really makes plays. 48 coverage snaps, 4 targets, 2 catches allowed, 18 yards. Very good numbers there. Nothing else to talk about with him. Honestly, I think our coverage unit looks very strong. I think we have a few weak spots that could be concerns. Nate Tillman, if he gets in there at all, he needs to do better than he's been doing. But I think Jackson Benny looks better at safety than he did at corner. I think it's a more natural fit. I think it's a better spot for him to be at. And I think we match up really well because I would say Elijah Davis and Smith Snowden, the guys they would have more trouble with are guys that are going to be tall, physical, go downfield receivers. And not that Kingston and Parker or Roberts can't do that, but that's not their specialty. They're more guys that get open and make you look dumb. Where I think, especially with Smith Snowden, that's kind of his specialty, like route running specialists and stuff like that. He's good at locking you down and not letting up much. So I really like the way our matchups look here. I think we're going to get tested. I think this receiver group or BYU is very good. I'm not going to beat around that. It does look very strong, very solid. But that's the matchup. We'll touch more about it at the end. But my initial thoughts is I do like our matchup. But if you're a BYU fan, I could also see why you'd feel confident about your receivers. It's there's a lot going on there, a lot of talent on both sides of the ball there. So we're going to move on to BYU's rushing attack and rushing offensive line against our rush defense. Okay, guys, now we are moving on to looking at the rushing defense for Utah, and then we are going to look at the rushing attack for BYU. So, taking a look at the rushing defense for Utah, guys, when we're looking at rushing defense, there's a couple big things I want to point out. So, the grades, I like to weigh in the grades, but I wouldn't just count them as if they're gold. That's how I look at the rushing defense because rushing the grade does matter probably more than other positions, but at the same time, there are some big factors we can look at. And what I would say we want to look at is tackles, missed tackle percentage, stops, and stop percentage. And stops are a neutral or negative play for the offense. That means you make the tackle at the line or behind the line. And missed tackles are obviously if you miss a tackle, and then percentage is how many of those you're missing of the opportunities you have. So right out the gate, I think one thing that stands out for Utah, so we're only looking at guys that are, we're sorting it by run defense snaps. And you look here, outside of Smith Snowden, now Smith Snowden does have a higher number than the rest of the group, right? 50%. They were basically, I think 2 or 3 of those were against Arizona State. So that number jumped up way higher after Arizona State than it was before. But you look outside of Smith Snowden, right? Blake Cotton's only had one opportunity to make a tackle. That's weird on 114 snaps. But you look at the rest of the guys, right? A bunch of opportunities to make tackles for guys like John Henry Daly, for Jonathan Hall, Lander Barton, Tao Johnson. And Tao Johnson's got the worst percentage at 17.6, but that's not super high. It's a little high, but not anything crazy. I think as you creep above 20, 25%, that's where you'd be concerned. But I mean, you're missing less than 1 out of 5 tackles. So you're a pretty decent tackler. And these guys, I mean, John Henry Daly, you don't expect edge rushers to miss tackles, but look at these linebackers. There's a reason they're graded so high. These are really low missed tackle percentages. And then you combine that with a lot of stops, right? 8 stops, 9 stops, 6.8% of his plays are stops, 6.0% of Lander Barton's plays are stops. So that's a good look. And then we got John Henry Daly, 8.1% of plays are stops. You can see, guys, of the guys that are really playing a lot of snaps, we don't have too many guys that are susceptible to missing tackles. really it's just Miss Snowden. Elijah Davis has played a lot too, and he's only at 12.5%. Hasn't made a ton of tackles either, but still, of our guys that have had a lot of opportunities, it is nice to see that we don't miss a ton of tackles. Nate Ritchie is at 13. He's at 31% missed tackles, but he is out, so don't worry about him. Logan Fano, a little high for an edge rusher, 16.7%, right? But still not crazy high. He's still not missing a lot of tackles. Jackson Benny now playing safety, where he was at corner, now at safety. You're going to be asked to tackle more, and the fact that a safety is at 15.4, that's solid. That's more than 1 out of 5, or less than 1 out of 5 of his tackles are missed. I like that number. And he's made 6 tackles, only missed 2 with 5 assisted tackles. So a lot of guys out here that are going to play a lot of snaps. Lance Holtzclaw too, more of an edge pass rusher. But it looks like when he's in there and he needs to play the run, he can play the run really well, doesn't miss any tackles, and has 5 stops. So Lance Holtzclaw in general, just always his name keeps popping up, and I'd love to see him play more. He seems, everything shows that he's good. Cash Dillon, another guy with 5 stops, 7 tackles, 2 missed, 18.2% is a little high for an edge rusher. That's a little high. And then anyone else worth pointing out? Lavani Demooney, right? 6 tackles, only 1 missed tackle, and 3 stops. And just so you guys know, when Lavani Demooney makes a stop, it is always a highlight play. Like, think about that Palomalu style tackle he had last week and some of the huge hits he has made in the open field. He is a playmaker, dude. I'm shocked we don't see him on the field more. He is like, just makes plays, dude. Very impressive player, Lavani Demooney. Yeah, so that's all we'll talk about there. But I think our run defense looks very strong. I think there's very few players you'd say are a concern, and I think it's pretty clear we're a good run defense. And I feel like when you consider it, guys, ASU was a powerful rushing offensive attack, and we really limited them. I mean, they did run the ball, but it was really more towards the end of the game when we were playing bend don't break. And when the game was really competitive, they didn't get that much on us. And so I feel very confident about our rushing defense moving forward. That's kind of where my mind is. Now let's go ahead and move on to the offensive line for BYU. Now, I will say, when you're looking at run blocking grades, that's really all there is to look at is the grade. There's not much else for PFF, at least. So let's take a look at how they grade out for the BYU Cougars. We'll look at their starting 5, just like we did before. Just 80 snaps. Okay. Take out. Oh, well, we'll keep the tight ends in, actually. So run blocking snaps, you can see here, I mean, their tackle, center, those are their guys that are for sure the starters, have all played quite a bit of pass block or run blocking snaps, and are all grading out above average to good. That's not shocking at all. Carson Ryan, pretty good run blocker, was a pretty good run blocker for Utah. Looks like a solid run blocking group. Again, the grades are the grades. I'd take them with a grain of salt, but it does look good. And, BYU is a team that does very well running the ball. So I would imagine that those are real grades, that they are pretty good at run blocking, and we're going to have our work cut out for us. So I think that's clear by the numbers, right? Maybe this guard here, he could be one of their guys, and he's got a below average grade, but it's not like a 40 run block grade or anything. It's not like a terrible grade. So they seem like a team that does run the ball well, and that does show. So let's move on to BYU's rushing attack with their running backs, and we can talk about their other players too that run the ball. And I'll touch on Bear Bachmeyer again with his rushing ability. So taking a look here, guys, running backs, non-running backs, that'll count in. I think is it Parker that gets a lot of rushing attempts as well? Let's see. Okay, so we'll go with guys with 15 rushing attempts. So decent amount per game so far. So it's looking here, guys, like it's Bear Bachmeyer, Sione Moa, and LJ Martin. I'll bump it down to 10 because I know one of their receivers showed up as a guy that gets some rushing attempts. Nothing crazy here, right? But Jovisa Demooney with 11 carries on the season for 61 yards. Parker Kingston 10 carries on the season for 50 yards. So those guys could get involved. They don't look terrible, but nothing crazy either. Not a ton of carries. So Sione Moa seems to be their number 2 back, their rotation guy. 90 yards on the year, 1 touchdown. Not a huge sample size, really good grade overall, but not a huge sample size. Let's see how these carries have played out. So 2 of those carries went for 10 plus yards, so nothing crazy there. And 1 of those carries went for 15 plus yards. So 7 first downs, though. So he must be getting in there on a little bit of short yardage. I'm going to touch on LJ Martin real quick, a guy that really impresses me. The numbers impress me, but more than the numbers, I've been aware of this guy just following BYU. He's very good. He is That's 6.4 yards a carry on 651 yards, 102 attempts, guys. He is no joke. He is a guy that brings the wood. He breaks tackles. You better come ready to play when you are lined up one-on-one against this guy. He is legit. And I think him plus a seemingly good run blocking offensive line is going to test our defensive front. If there's one thing you can point to about our defensive front and say, I don't love this, it's that we've missed some tackles. Now let's go ahead and look. How many forced? Yep, who would have guessed, right? 28 forced missed tackles, guys. So he's over 25% of his carries have a forced missed tackle. That is really impressive. And he's a playmaker, too. I mean, on top of that, 6.4 yards a carry. He's not just making guys miss, he's making plays. 19 of his 102 carries have gone for 10 plus yards. So 1 out of 5 times he gets the ball, it's going for 10 plus yards. And then 8 carries of 15 plus yards. So 8% of the time, he's breaking away a big one. So this guy is a playmaker, guys. And then again, we mentioned it before, Bear Bachmeier. He brings it on the ground. This is a team that will try to run the ball. I think they will get some chunk plays on the ground as the game goes on. This is the matchup, right? I don't hate how we match up here. I actually think we match up really well. But I would also say that with what BYU seems to be bringing in the rushing attack department, it is not going to be an easy day for our rush defense. I think we got a great group. And what I love about our group is it's a deep group that we can rotate guys in and out. We got a lot of guys that have played a lot of snaps and done very well against the run. And so we can keep our guys pretty fresh. But I would say they will be tested. That seems clear. I'd say there's not too much of an edge. If there is an edge here, I'm just going to be real. I might give a slight edge to BYU when it comes to their rushing attack against our run defense. I mean, I've been very, very impressed with LJ Martin over the years. He stands out to me when I watch BYU. He is a clear, just NFL level running back. It's like no doubt in my mind when you watch him, he is NFL level. And you look, guys, 466 of his yards are after contact, 4.57 yards after contact. Again, he makes guys miss. So holding those guys down and making sure that they do not make plays on us is super important. And again, LG Martin, 39 first downs. So it's going to be a tough challenge, guys. I think they bring a good offense with really good receiving weapons and a very strong rushing attack. And I think that's taken a lot of pressure off Bear Bachmeier in the passing game. And I think just quick overview of how our defense will do against their offense is the number one question is how do we do against the run? Because if they're able to run at will, which means we have to commit hard to the run, and they can play action, and their deadly receiving core can make our corners, overcommit to the run and look stupid or get over the top one-on-one, that's not going to be a good recipe for success. So I do think this will be a great challenge. I think we've got a defense that looks up for the challenge, and we've got a nasty defense. But I'd say it really feels 50-50 with their offense against our defense. It will be a tough fight, and we're gonna make them earn it, but they're gonna make us earn it as well. So now we're gonna move over to Utah's offense against BYU's defense. All right, guys, and we are going to start with Utah's passing attack as we talk about their offense. And it all starts with this guy, Devin Dampier, a guy that has been an electric weapon for Utah. And outside of one game has looked, just awesome. Some mistakes here and there, but any game you look at outside of Texas Tech as an overall performance, it's been very impressive. 71.3 completion percentage on 164 attempts, 117 completions, 1,132 yards. Yards per attempt's about 7. And so that is low, but I would say that is the yards per attempt is how the offense runs, right? They don't ask you to shoot it deep. They ask you to run the system, to find open guys, to work the system, to make reads. And Devin Dampier does a great job of that. And that's why he's got 11 touchdowns through the air and only 3 picks. I think he's a guy that's really impressed and done a lot for this offense, really. And I think we'll look at the big time throws, turnover worthy plays. Those numbers don't look as good for Devin this year. But I think a lot of it is, guys, this offense doesn't ask him to make a lot of big time throws. It asks him to read what he sees and make the decision. And that's why he has 11 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. And that's why he's grading out at a 76.7. And we'll talk about him as a rushing weapon, which is as good as his passing ability is, the rushing ability is that much more impressive. So I talked about it a second ago. Big time throws, only 4 to 5 turnover worthy plays, average depth of target 8.8. Not great there, 4 to 5. And I think if you're watching Devin Dampier and you're being fair, there are some throws, even against Arizona State. Just there was one really bad one where he just like throws off his back foot. And then I really thought it was distasteful. He was like calling out the tight end, like pointing over there, like the tight end did something wrong. He was like, bro, you just threw 25 yards downfield off your back foot into double coverage. What are you talking about? Just being honest, I was shocked. And then there was another one that was it was PI, but it felt like the corner had too good of a position on the ball. So I would just say I didn't love that one either. But the other one was horrendous. But overall, against ASU, I mean, Devin Dampier looked amazing. There was just a couple plays there. And you can see here, guys, he's thrown the ball for 58 first downs. And I would say when you look at Devin Dampier's total yards through the air, they're even more impressive when you consider in ASU and West Virginia, he was sitting out by the fourth quarter. Both games, he got pulled because his performance was that dominant that the game was over by the time the fourth quarter started. So something like the yardage numbers would be significantly better had these games been more competitive games, but they weren't. I mean, we were blowing these teams out, and we blew out a top 25 team in ASU. Sure, their quarterback was out, but it didn't feel like it was their defense wasn't their quarterback. Like the reason we lit up their defense with points was not because their quarterback was out. So let's go ahead and move on to the receivers for Utah. So this is kind of a criticism of Utah all year has kind of been that we've got a couple guys. We're going to go off guys that have 15 targets. We got a couple guys. Actually, I'm going to go off 12 targets for this group because I think that'll give us a better sample. So we got a couple guys. You know what? I'm going to go off less just because I want to make sure we get Wayshawn Parker, his numbers in here. So let's go off 10. I'm guessing that'll pop him in. No, still won't pop him in. So we'll just go off this group. Wayshawn Parker has got about 100. You know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna lower it to whatever Wayshawn has. So I think it's 5, something like that. All right, Wayshawn Parker's in now. So he's got just under 100 receiving yards. But we sort by receiving yards. So the clear guy that stands out for us is going to be Ryan Davis, 415 receiving yards, has come on as a really big playmaker for this offense. 2 touchdowns in the year, 46 targets, guys. That's nearly 8 targets a game. Very impressive player in Ryan Davis. He is really game in and game out, just making it happen. And he's become just kind of the weapon for this offense. You can see here, guys, 8 forced missed tackles. And for a receiver, that's very impressive. So 8 forced missed tackles on 39 catches. I mean, what are we talking about there? 20% of his catches have a missed tackle after the catch. That's pretty impressive for a receiver. And I think he's a huge weapon on this team. I love how his yards are looking. I think he could possibly get 1,000 yards with 1 or 2 big games from here to the end of the season. So I'd love to see that happen. Okay, moving on to Dallin Bentley. Dallin Bentley, 270 receiving yards. He's Utah's tight end, number 88. He 32 targets, 24 catches, good reception percentage, 3 touchdowns as well. And it does feel like he gets targeted a lot for jump ball opportunities and tough third downs. And you can see that does seem to add up here. 6 contested catch opportunities, only brought in 2 of them though. Not breaking many tackles, but did catch 15 first downs on the 24 catches he caught. So more than half his catches go for a first down. Tobias Merriweather, not overall good on the season, but does feel like there's something kind of cooking there at this point. 18 targets, 7 catches, but I think against ASU he had a couple plays that really went big. You can see here, so 4 of the 7 catches he's had are for first down, so he does get targeted deep. Let's see, average depth of target. Yeah, he's 19.6. So these are downfield targets that he's getting. 31 yak yards. Yeah, so he's kind of coming on, but I would say not a huge weapon for us. JJ Buchanan didn't get too much action in the last game, even though I was optimistic about it. Neither did Larry Simmons. I also want to caveat JJ Buchanan and Larry Simmons. I'm still somewhat optimistic they can get more involved. That game was pouring down rain, which led to us almost exclusively running the ball in that game. It was really, we were just running. But Wayshawn Parker, another good weapon for Utah, 7 targets, 6 catches, 2 touchdowns through the air. He's a deadly player on the ground and through the air. So now let's go ahead and move over to the coverage guys for BYU. And BYU's had a pretty touted defense, right? BYU's been pretty impressive on defense this year, especially last year. And I think when you look at Utah and BYU, I mean, you kind of see 2 similar teams, right? It's not that different what you're reading when you read the numbers from these 2 teams. It's 2 teams that thrive on having really good defenses, and they thrive on really trying to make you, beat them on offense, right? Or I mean, they don't make mistakes on offense, and they lean on the defense, right? Both teams is an offense that steady, doesn't put up a ton of points, but gets the ball in the end zone. I mean, that's more BYU than Utah. Utah's looking, I mean, they both got right at their points per game, but I would say it's not quite the same story when you consider Utah's pulled out their quarterback in the fourth quarter 2 weeks in a row. But either way, both teams lean on an explosive defense and rely on their offenses not to make mistakes as to give them an opportunity to win the game. I think that's pretty true for both teams. More than they rely on their offenses to make big plays to win the game. I hope that makes sense. I feel like I'm rambling a bit there. But you can see here, guys. So let's check out their players. 161 coverage snaps. Evan Johnson only allowed 123 yards, 29 targets, 15 catches. So been targeted a decent amount, but only allows about a 50% reception percentage. This guy here, Maury Bamba, not quite as good. He's letting over 1 yard per coverage snap. It's like 1.3, something like that. 95 coverage snaps, 121 yards, 1 penalty, 20 targets, 12 catches. So he could be a guy we might be looking at target. Not super impressive with those numbers. Tommy Prasis, 81 coverage snaps, 103 yards. Another guy that could be a little susceptible. And those are all corners. So those are guys that are going to get out there, going to get a decent amount of snaps. Another corner, Therian Alexander, 120 coverage snaps, only 68 yards. They do have 2 very good corners that seem to be getting the majority of the snaps, in Alexander and Johnson. But then this Prasis and Maury Bamba do seem to be a little more of opportunities to work our receivers in there. Okay, now let's check out linebacker. This guy's at 115 coverage snaps, only allowed 66 yards. Impressive number there. Jaden Dunlap, 62 yards on 33 coverage snaps. So he hasn't gotten a lot of a sample, but you look there, he's allowing almost right at about 2 yards per coverage snap. It's pretty high. And then we've got, we've got some other guys that look pretty awesome. Raider Damouni as a safety to have 99 coverage snaps, only allowing 55 yards. So I would say they remind me a lot of our group, where it is a lot of guys out here. And then this guy, Tanner Wall, looks a lot like Teo Johnson, right? Where it's basically like hasn't let up much at all on a ton of coverage snaps. So really similar there. Again, really similar teams. This is impressive. Siali Essera, 109 coverage snaps, only allowed 7 yards, 3 targets, 1 catch. Very impressive. I think it's very similar to us, where it is a group that has a few weak spots, but overall nothing too alarming where you feel like they're a bad pass defense. Looks like a pretty good group. I would say when you look at the fact that we don't have a ton of weapons at receiver, and they have some good corners, I'd say this is probably in their favor, right? Their ability to cover the pass compared to our ability to throw. I think that's pretty clear, right? I think the good news here is you do see a good amount of yak yards here, right? So a lot of their guys aren't letting up a lot of yards, but they are getting a lot of yak yards. And I think a guy like Ryan Davis will capitalize on that. And that's kind of what he does, is catch the ball after the catch and make something happen. But again, I still think they have a bit of an advantage there in their passing defense so far against our passing offense. Now we're going to move on to talking about our pass blocking versus their pass rushing. And that could be where a big advantage is had. And I also want to make sure to caveat again that BYU is currently played the 52nd strongest schedule in college football, and Utah has played the 21st strongest schedule in college football. And another thing to throw in there is the majority of the rough plays or whatever you want to consider it by Utah were in one game. I mean, so much of like where the stats look rough for some of our guys is really just one game. And outside of that, there's not too much. So I think that's a really good thing for Utah. So let's go ahead and move over to Utah. And we're going to look at our starting five offensive line, who, I don't think it's any secret. They're one of the best groups in the country. I don't think that's even argued by anyone. I mean, they've really have dominated a lot of the opponents they played, and they've played some good opponents. So we're going to go off guys that have at least 100 snaps. This gets us our starting five into Noah Togiai, Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomu, Michael Mokafisi, and Jaron Kump. Okay. And I think is even more impressive when you consider the units they've gone against, right? I talked about strength of schedule. If anyone's played a tough strength of schedule, it is our offensive line. West Virginia, and BYU played West Virginia as well. So I'm not saying that they haven't played anyone. I'm just saying West Virginia's pass rush was legit, right? They were a really nasty pass rush. And then Texas Tech, probably the best pass rush in the country. I think that's clearly true. As a unit, they have the best pass rush in the country. And then, or as at least they're starting two edge rushers. Anyways, Arizona State also had a pretty decent pass rush. So we've played some tough competition here. And you look, guys, to Noah Togiai, one pressure allowed on 195 pass blocking snaps. That is insane, guys. That is such a good number, especially the groups he's gone up against. He is not talked about as highly as he should be. And Spencer Fano, a guy that's going against some of the best edge rushers in the country, has allowed 3 pressures on 195 snaps. And Caleb Lomu, who really stepped it up after Texas Tech. Just going to shout that guy out. I called him out a little bit, so I'm going to call him out the other way as well. Damn, he's been at 5 pressures allowed, I think, since the Texas Tech game, and it just keeps staying there, right? He's gone against some good units since then and is just locking people down. So good on you, Caleb Lomu. Only 5 pressures allowed on 195 snaps. Jaron Kump, 168 snaps. 4 pressures allowed, so very strong number there. Michael Mokafisi, only 3 pressures allowed, 181 snaps. This unit has been tested, and continues to look extremely high end, extremely strong, and extremely impressive. I couldn't be happier about what we're seeing from this offensive line. And the reason I say that so much is I just think there's so many years where people like bring up Utah's offensive line and always say, like, oh, yeah, they're so great. They're so great. But the numbers don't always play that out. This year, it's playing it out, guys. This year, our offensive line looks so damn good. Like, I'm used to us having the really good run blocking offensive line that might struggle a bit in the pass, but we are dominating the trenches in the pass blocking, just like not even competitive. I mean, we've gone against really good units. Anyways, I'm sure BYU is going to be bringing a pretty good unit. I've heard the BYU fans complain about their pass rush not quite being what they want it to be. Let's go ahead and go off the number 30. So this is a decent, 30. So this is a decent amount of pass rush snaps per game. So let's take a look here, guys. So these are the guys that get a lot of pass rush opportunities. You can see this guy, John Twim Popey, however you say that, Popu, 2.9% win percentage, so pretty low. And then we got the Saboteur himself, Keanu Tanuvasa, a new way. Just kidding. No hard feelings. I'm sure he got paid a ton of money and you would have done the same thing. 9.7% win percentage, strong win percentage, and 8 pressures on 100 pass rush snaps. So I know a lot of people have been critical of him because he has the 1 sack and only a couple tackles as well. Not a couple tackles, but like a handful of tackles or whatever. He that number does look pretty good. The thing is, as much as that is solid numbers for a defensive interior player, our offensive line looks amazing. So I think they're going to hold him pretty well. I'd be surprised if they didn't. Vilami Pouha, 11.8% win percentage for edge rusher. That's pretty good. Not at the level of any of our starting 3 rotation edge rusher, but still pretty good. Logan Lutui, 4.3% win percentage. I'm guessing. Oh, he's an edge rusher. That's bad for an edge. 74 pass rush snaps for an edge rusher, and he has a 4.3 win percentage. Damn, that is low. Hunter Clegg, another previous Utah guy, I believe, 73 pass rush snaps, and he's got a pretty good number, 12.7. Again, not as good as any of the guys in our 3 edge rusher rotation, but still pretty good. And then you kind of see from here, you keep going down. Another edge rusher that gets a decent amount of snaps with only a 6.7 win percentage is pretty low. Yeah, that's not very good. And then 6.5% from this linebacker on 57 pass rush snaps, pretty low there. Or actually, sorry, I was an edge rusher, Bodie Schoonover, but um, this linebacker looks pretty good. The other guys didn't look super good, but this linebacker looks good. 11.1% win percentage, 5 pressures, and a really good pass rush grade. But I would say this: as good as he looks, he doesn't look as good win percentage and pressure rates as our linebackers look as pass rushers. So I would say this: I think they've got a decent pass rush unit. I think the BYU fans have made it sound terrible. Their edge rushers look okay. Their defensive interior looks pretty good. But I think they're going to have a pretty bad day here against our pass blocking, just to be honest with you. And I think, oh, this is one thing to point out. I think Jack Kelly will be in. I think I've seen that. Let me double check on the injury report here. I'm 90% sure he's in. So that's actually worth calling out because I think the low snaps for Jack Kelly is because oh, and by the way, it looks like Raider Demooney is doubtful for the game. We talked about him for BYU in coverage. He is doubtful. And Sione Moa is out for the game. He was one of the running backs in that rotation. No one else really worth mentioning here. Yeah. But let's go ahead and imagine Jack Kelly's going to be in then. So 12 pressures on 36 pass rush snaps. That's another crazy number. The win rate is 20%. He's a beast. He's going to be a nasty pass rusher. So if he can get back there consistently, that'll be a tough one. But I would say I'll give you this. So Jack Kelly does look extremely good. Outside of him, there's no one that really impresses me. I think basically what you have that looks very good is Keanu Tanavasa with a 9.7 win percentage. You've got Hunter Clegg with a 12.7, and you've got Isaiah Glasker at an 11.1, and then Pouha at an 11.8. Outside of that, no one looks good besides Jack Kelly, and Jack Kelly looks extremely good. But I don't think any of the edge rushers or defensive interior players really scaring me at all. And considering how damn good our offensive line's been, I'm not too concerned. So that's kind of my thoughts on the matchup there with their pass rush against our pass blocking offensive line. I think I think their coverage unit looks a little better than our passing attack, right, with our receivers. But I feel like our offensive line is significantly better than their pass rush. So as long as Jack Kelly doesn't become a major problem and we game plan around him a little bit, I feel very good about our opportunities to take advantage of our passing game against their passing defense. Okay, guys, and now we are moving into the rushing offense for Utah versus the rushing defense for BYU. When we look at this, we'll start with the offensive line here, guys. You can see the offensive line for Utah. Like I talked about, all you really have as far as offensive line run blocking goes are greats. That's really about it. I wish there was more data to look at. I think it's just a note for PFF in the future. Maybe just like you look at stop percentage and stops for defensive players, it'd be great to know like stops allowed for offensive linemen. It just feels like the grades are just what I like about so many of the other positions and so many of the other much of the other data is that I don't have to just rely on your grades, but it really feels like here that's really all I've got is your opinion of how they played. So I don't love that. Just a note for the future, but you can see here Spencer Vano, that kind of adds up with the general perception, an elite run blocker. And then Dallin Bentley looking very good as a run blocker. Caleb Lomu, average. And then the rest of Utah's offensive line, a little below average. And then Tanoa Togiai kind of playing around with that bad line at a 57.1. So I would say, I don't know. I don't think the I don't think Dallin Bentley's been an amazing run blocker. I don't think he's been bad either. I've seen him make some key blocks. I've seen him look good, but I don't think I've seen anyone look that bad as run blockers. But we'll take it at face value with a grain of salt though. Like let's say, they're Spencer Fano's really good. Caleb Lumo's decent, and the interior of the offensive line could do better. I think it's probably a fair statement. And Dallin Bentley looks pretty decent. So now let's move over to BYU and talk about their rushing defense. So it's a pretty good unit that does not let up many yards. I think they're at like 100 yards rushing allowed per game heading into this matchup. So they are a unit that is very tough to run against. The good news for Utah is we've run very well against some good teams. The one team that stifled us was Texas Tech, but BYU is legit against the run, and we're going to see it here, guys. We're going to sort off run defense snaps. I think right out the gate, there's a couple numbers I like to see, right? They're guys that are playing a lot of run defense snaps. Their safety here off, what is that, 12 tackle opportunities, has missed 25% of his tackles. You go a little lower, another safety, not too bad here. Raider Damuni, who's actually seems to be, I think he's doubtful for the game. I think that's how he's listed, but doubtful means more likely to be out than to be in. Outside of that, you don't see anyone with any super high missed tackle numbers. There's a corner, but corners, like, what do you expect their missed tackle number to be? Jack Kelly for a linebacker, 15.8 is pretty high. Both our linebackers were in like that 3 to 5% range. So 15.8 is pretty high for a linebacker. So I'll say that. Does have a high stop percentage. I mean, I think they're a good run defense. You guys can look at all the numbers. They're all on the screen here if you want to take a deeper dive. But I think it's clear they're a pretty good run defense. Not much getting around that. Looks like a solid group of run defenders for BYU. Okay, guys, let's take a look here. So, if you're not a Utah fan, you'll probably be looking at all these guys getting carries and think like, who's actually going to be getting carries? If you're a Utah fan, you probably already know, but I'll touch on it real quick. So, Nakari Rogers, Devin Dampier, and Wayshawn Parker, clearly from the numbers, are the guys that are going to get the majority of the carries. There are big unit that makes plays and gets it done, right? And then outside of them, you'll see a lot of guys getting carries. The guys that are really still involved in this offense that are getting carries right now, Hunter Andrews out for the season. Bird Ficklin could get involved on some trick plays. Nate Johnson could, but really Bird Ficklin's just been coming in and clean up. He's the clear number 2 quarterback right now. But Daniel Bray has gotten involved. So he's down here, 8 carries for 73 yards, 9.1 yards per carry. And he looks explosive and dynamic. So those are the 4 guys I'm going to talk about are Nakari Rogers, Devin Dampier, Wayshawn Parker, and Daniel Bray. And you look at Nakari Rogers, Devin Dampier, and Wayshawn Parker up here. These guys, between the 3 of them, have over 1,000 yards. I mean, this is a deadly trio. And you look at Wayshawn Parker, 6.7 yards a carry, 3 touchdowns. And the crazy thing is, our leading rusher is Devin Dampier with nearly 400 yards on the ground, 393 yards, 5 TDs. But he does have 4 fumbles. It's too many fumbles. But he's really started to come on hot towards the end of the season. And you look at the yards per carry with Wayshawn Parker and Devin Dampier, it's super impressive, 6.3, 6.7. But Nakari Rogers, don't let him fool you, 4.1 yards per carry. But look at how many first downs he has. Where is it? Past it. Yeah, right here. So 27 first downs on 72 carries. So what? 35, 40% of his carries are going for first downs, which means it's short yardage. And he has 6 rushing touchdowns. So 6 of those resulted in touchdowns, right? Really impressive stuff. And a bunch of missed tackles by this group, right? Wayshawn Parker, 14 on 50 carries. It's a really high pop. That's what, 30% range, something like that. And then we got Devin Dampier, 18 missed tackles on 62 carries. So a really explosive unit. The only guy that could have his missed tackles a bit higher is Nakari Rogers. He's just a little over 10%. But again, I think a lot of that is due to being the short yardage guy. But it's a really good trio. And Daniel Bray, the sample size is so limited, but in that sample size, 8 carries, he has 4 missed tackles. He's got 4 first downs, and 2 of those went for 15 plus yards. So he is dynamic. He is an explosive player. And if you're a BYU fan, do not count him out because he's gotten an average of 4 carries per game in the last 2 games and contributed roughly, 40 yards per game. It's 36.5 yards per game. So he is a good player. He will probably get some carries in this game, but the three-headed monster, Devin Dampier, Wayshawn Parker, and Akari Rogers is the big X factor here. I think one of the biggest focuses of this game is going to be how does Utah's rushing attack do against BYU's rushing defense? I could touch on it a lot right now, but I'm going to go ahead and just move into talking about this game, right? We're just going to go ahead and give my final recap, give my final analysis on these two units. Let's go ahead and go to a different screen. I'm going to switch to a different screen. I'm going to give my final thoughts on these two units. Okay, guys. So I think there was a lot to break down here. I think there was a lot to break down. So let's recap Utah's offense against BYU's defense, right? I think when you look at that matchup, it is a tough one. I think what you've got is a Utah offense that has looked unstoppable running the ball. Really. I mean, you guys looked at that. Wayshawn Parker and Devin Dampier are both well above 6 yards per carry. Wayshawn Parker is almost at 7 yards per carry. And then Akari Rogers is no slouch himself. I know his average yards per carry is 4.1 yards, but he's got 6 rushing touchdowns. And 30% of his carries have gone for first down. So very, very impressive stuff here. Um, the other thing that I think is that, the rushing defense for BYU is a nasty group. They look pretty damn good. And our run blocking offensive line, outside of some high performers, hasn't graded out super well, right? Um, it's a tough one there. And then I think our passing game, so taking a step back and looking at it, our receivers, I think their corners and safeties beat our receivers a little bit. But I think our X factor in that matchup is how much more dominant our offensive line has looked compared to their pass rushing unit. And it really is a big factor. If you can give your quarterback 3+ seconds every time he drops back to throw, that is a big game changer that really lets a quarterback drop back, diagnose the defense, and make a sound decision. And on top of that, with Dampier, nearly 400 rushing yards on the year, if if you give him time and he doesn't find anyone, he is tough to bring down. He has not been sacked much all year. He hasn't been pressured a ton, but even less has he been sacked. He is a tough guy to bring down. And if he's feeling confident and feeling at that high level we know he can play at, he can scramble out of the pocket and make plays. But I do think we are going to have some tests here. And I would say our rushing defense or their rushing defense against our rushing offense is such a big part of this matchup, guys. Such a big part of this matchup. They are really going to uh, test us. This defense is really going to test us. And I really think how our rushing offense does against their rushing defense will be a huge factor to who comes out on top in this game. I think it's tough. I think their rushing defense has an edge over our run blocking unit, but then I think we got a mean trio, four-headed monster of guys that can run the ball that are going to be tough to handle for them. Now, flipping over to our defense against their offense, the Utah defense against the BYU offense, I think our corners and safeties probably have a little bit of a disadvantage against their receivers. But I don't know. Again, all this stuff, when we take a step back, Utah has played a significantly stronger strength of schedule. And I think Parker Kingston and Chase Roberts are very good, but we've played some other very good receiving units and not let up a ton of yards. I mean, Jordan Tyson struggled against Utah. I don't know the exact number of yards he had off the top of my head, but I could find out. Tell you that much, I could find out. Jordan, yeah, 8 receptions for 40 yards, guys. Jordan Tyson against Utah, and he's one of the best receivers in the country. So I think when you look at that, let's call it even. I think that's fair to say that our pass defense against their receiving offense is even. But I also think that their quarterback not super great through the air. Like I said, streaky, and when it's bad, it's really bad. When it's good, it's really good. So I would give our probably, when you consider strength of schedule, a lot of stuff factored in, probably about neck and neck with our corners and their receivers. And then their quarterback's probably a little lower than what we're used to. I think we have a small edge there. Now, I also think that our pass rush has a decent edge over the offensive line for BYU. I think that's going to be a pretty winnable matchup. And I think if we're getting back there, I think Bear's capable of getting out of the pocket and making some plays with his feet. But I do think we're going to get back there, and I do think we're going to force him to make some quicker decisions. And, that could lead to some pretty big mistakes by Bear. I do think BYU also has a very deadly rushing attack. And I think that their offensive line looks good at run blocking. And I think they're going to test us on the ground. So, guys, this game's pretty damn close. Just being honest with you, I thought this when I looked at the numbers initially, and I think it even more now that I really dove into it. Um, I think a lot of it is going to be about who comes out and who looks strong. Are we getting that explosive, dynamic Devin Dampier? Ah, man, so many things to factor in. So many things to factor in here. Also, BYU's home field advantage. Let's be real. Cougar fans know this, and Ute fans know this. That's a real home field advantage. They're a real strong unit. I got to be honest, though, guys. 2 games in a row, Devin Dampier has been pulled out in the fourth quarter because his performance was just that dominant. And that's on defense and on offense. The other team was no longer in the game. So it is just hard for me to not just give Utah some brownie points for that. I I feel that Utah has an advantage here. And this is my thought. I think Utah has the bigger playmakers on offense, right? At least at the quarterback position, Utah has the guy on offense that can get it done. I feel like running back wise, I feel like Wayshawn Parker and LJ Martin are kind of neck and neck. But Utah's Devin Dampier is going to be a huge factor. How does he come out? How does he show? But let me be clear, guys. I can't, in good faith, say that Utah is just going to go out there and run the table in this game. That's not how I see it. And then you add in the fact that BYU has a real home field advantage, like I was saying. So I think surface level, due to Devin Dampier, I would have Utah winning this game 28-21. Not a huge win, but a good feeling that Utah should be the more dominant team. But you factor in BYU's home field advantage, I think that really makes things closer and is going to make this game neck and neck till the finish. Um, I think it's going to be tough. I really think they're going to test us because one big difference between the teams is Utah's had a bunch of dominant wins and one kind of tough loss. Not as tough as the score said against Tech, but tough. And BYU has had a bunch of scrappy wins where they had to fight until the final whistle to get the win. Utah just hasn't had as much experience with that. So really us looking good when the game is on the line, because my prediction is that this will be a tight game, and that's where BYU can thrive, is in these tight games. I've got the game. I'm going to go ahead and call this one 27-24 for Utah. This is going to be a tough, stingy defensive battle. And I think Utah is going to give BYU their first loss, but Utah is also going to have to show up. And in these battles where BYU does well, these neck and neck drag out fights till the end of the game, Utah is going to need to show they can do it, which is something we haven't shown yet. And I do think it's going to be a big test for us. I just think overall, looking at everything, I think Utah's played a significantly tougher schedule. I think Utah's a more dynamic quarterback. I think we've got more high caliber players at a lot of different positions. I think overall that wins us the day. But I want to be super clear. BYU does look like a very good team. Um, it's hard to say this isn't going to be a great game. I had some people reach out to me earlier this week saying, "Oh, like Utah looks like they're going to win big," and I said, I don't know, man. I haven't done my deep dive yet, but that's not what the initial read is telling me. And after the deep dive, it told me even less that it's going to be a dominant win. It just feels like there's very little separation between these two teams. And it's going to be at Provo. They're going to come out. They are going to be loud. Let's punch them in the mouth and shut them up, dude. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, 27-24. I got Utah winning a scrappy drag out fight. I could see Utah with the way Bear Bachmeier kind of plays with this streaky and kind of how BYU's played, where they'll let us get up early to do, due to some mistakes, where I could see all of a sudden we're up 14-3, 14-0 early in the game, and then they're just scrappy, and he gets streaky and he starts making some nice throws. The receivers make some big chunk plays. I could see it happening. But I got this one going 30 or 27-24 after digging into it. I would love to know your guys' thoughts. Comment down below. What am I missing? What are you guys thinking? Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm out of here. Go Utes.
Hut! Hut! Fight!